how far have things come, and where do they stand now?
Yeah, I think context is really important in talking about any sort of recovery. I think the long nature of this particular freight recession, being that we're in almost 24 months of consistent quarter over quarter decline, I think that puts context into this recovery that so many in the industry are excited about. But I do think that it's going to be a long slog to come out of what's been a very long freight recession.
What are the positives about where things stand right now?
Sure. So if you were to look at some graphs, which I think, and just looking at pick your matrix, whether you're talking about tonnage or number of shipments or margins, we've been operating at kind of like the low of COVID. And so if you were to go back and pinpoint like March of 2020, we've been at levels near that for almost 24 months. And so what you're beginning to see now is just a slight upward and to the right trend in those graphs, whether you're talking about spot market rates, contract rates, the tonnage, the volume, all of those they're no longer declining. And that's what you see those in the industry celebrating.
You obviously we've got the large companies, JB Hunt, ArcBest. What's for this area? Where do where do things stand as far as that's concerned?
I
As
think
far
what
as they're concerned.
Sure. I think really what we're looking for is predictability and stability. And what we've seen over the last 24 months has been this kind of pent up, like, is this the turnaround? Is this the turnaround? And is this the turnaround? And I think we're finally at a point where you're seeing comments coming out from those executives that indicate that they truly believe that we have survived the trough, and that we are looking at a genuine uptick, even though it may be a slow recovery. Looking forward into that gives them a better position in negotiating with their shippers, gives them a better ability to look at their employment decisions, make sure that they're hiring the right people to sustain them over this economic upturn.
So it's been 24 months. Is it going to be another 24 months before we're back to where we should be?
There are differing opinions on how quickly we may get, back to. I think a return to normal is what we're hoping for. I mean, I think that's the realistic expectation, and whether that takes the entirety of 2025 or some expedited time frame a little bit less than that. I think that the experts disagree on how quick we may be able to climb out. But I'm hoping that by the end of 2025, that we'll no longer be talking about the Great Freight Recession.
Bottom line is it's leveled off. Is that correct?
Um, I would say that you're actually looking at kind of like a reverse check. Because if you look at the trend line over time, it is pretty consistently downward. And now you have at least, a quarter's worth of those indicators changing trajectory. And so that's what we're highlighting, and that's what the cause for the coverage of turning the freight economy around.
Is there still a driver shortage?
In this economy, there's certainly not been what we've historically referred to as a driver shortage. I think that there's still maybe the quality and quantity are maybe a little bit misaligned. But more recently, there's been a shipper shortage more so than a driver shortage. The underestimation of consumer behavior and the impact of COVID, and how the industry actually realized a great boom when many other sectors were not. When people were at home from the spring of 2020 to the spring of 2022, our industry was operating at very healthy margins, and I think that consumer behavior of pulling those demands forward, what we've been seeing is a very prolonged impact of that. So that the 24 months that we spent at home, remodeling our homes or buying trampolines and treadmills, that was a very good time for our industry. And now as consumer behavior has trended back the other direction, we're still looking for some normalization in that goods versus services spend. And we're hopeful that that's what 2025 brings.
So really the recession has hit not only the trucking industry, but people, just people aren't spending like they used to.
Well, and they're spending on different things. We were talking about spending on concerts and vacations, or maybe things that they're not necessarily things, more experiences as opposed to goods, and that dramatically impacts the surface transportation sector.